Hello everyone. Threads of Destiny is the latest World of Warcraft animated short all about the Nerubian princess AZEROTH, her mother Queen Nephrys, and their dealings with Xal'atath. It is a gorgeous animation and I absolutely suggest you watch it in full. Link below in case you haven't seen it. This is not my reaction to the video, it's my analysis. So stick around if you would like to know why I am convinced this animated short finally confirmed a fan theory that I and many others have held for a very long time. As the cinematic opens, we see the spider in a web wrapping up its prey, and you hardly need me to tell you that this sets the tone for the entire video. A spider creates her web, an intricate design of thin yet surprisingly powerful threads that form a beautiful pattern but also work together perfectly in ways that aren't always obvious. Every thread has a purpose. They all work together to achieve the spider's singular goal, convincing some unsuspecting creature to be that spider's meal. I'm sure many of us know the old nursery poem. Will you walk into my parlor, said the spider to the fly. It's a story about a spider trying to convince a fly to be caught in his web. The fly resists at first, but ultimately falls into the trap anyway because the spider is just so good at manipulation. In the end, it's the spider's use of flattery that kills the fly. But the scene that we're seeing here isn't the process of catching the fly. Rather, this is a prophecy. Whatever happens next, the end result, we're already being told, is dinner. Now, as far as our narrator is concerned, she's the spider. AZEROTH is, after all, a princess of the Nerubian, one of the spider people. As she tells us a story from long ago, one that took place during the time of the Black Empire, we see the City of Threads, the Nerubian capital city in Xal'atath. One of the first things we learned about the city during the BlizzCon What's Next panel is that height equals hierarchy. The city has been built on top of itself over and over again. As a result, the lower districts, which are often falling into ruin, are occupied by the city's poorest and least important, while the upper districts are enjoyed by those with power and influence.
The Nerubian City of Threads has been built on the ruins of itself, over and over and over again. As areas decay and crumble, a new district is built upon its ruins, and as a result, the city climbs ever higher. Those Nerubians favored by the queen, or possessing enormous wealth, or both, command the greatest views and live in the highest places over these swarming masses of the many districts.
So if this scene took place during the Black Empire, the buildings we're seeing have probably already been built on top of by now. Yet the city still looks largely the same today, partly because above it hangs the palace, like a spider on a thread. No matter how many times the city is built on top of itself, the palace will always hang there, above it all. So when AZEROTH says, "Slender is the strand that guides our destiny," we are seeing this visually.
Slender is the strand that guides our destiny.
As princess, AZEROTH isn't expecting to be voted in as queen. She'll just become queen when it's time. It's her destiny. And the position that the royal family enjoys in this Nerubian society, the palace, is quite literally only held above it all by a slender strand. Of course, the palace itself is connected to the rest of the city by more strands of web. AZEROTH's destiny is bound to the kingdom she is expecting to rule. And I just want to take a moment here to appreciate the spider designs all over Xal'atath. If there's one thing the Nerubians know, it's how to embrace an aesthetic. But back to AZEROTH's story. As a princess, destined to become queen, her mother would have prepared her for this role since birth. AZEROTH was still a child when her mother refused the call of the old gods. Look at her little baby spider face. But she was invited along to stand by her mother's side to witness this important political event precisely because one day she might have to make a similar decision herself. Unfortunately, she didn't quite learn the lesson Nephrys tried to teach. It's clear that AZEROTH admires her mother's strength in refusing the old god representative. When Nephrys uses the threads to rip the creature apart, AZEROTH looks on, eyes wide in childish awe. The event had an impression. The problem is, AZEROTH saw the violent act and thought that was the strength. A not entirely unpredictable reaction from a child who is honestly too young to really understand everything that's going on. She talks about the moment making her believe the Nerubians were destined for greatness, not understanding that Nephrys had arguably sacrificed greatness in exchange for a people's freedom. When the old god representative warned that the kingdom will wither as a result of her decision, it wasn't an idle threat, and Nephrys knew it. She understood that refusing the old gods meant rejecting the power and rewards that they offered, and she still made her choice, even if that meant never being able to quite obtain the greatness they offered without them. So when the kingdom inevitably struggled, AZEROTH saw that as a failure, while Nephrys understood it was the price they had paid in order to be free.
Slender is the strand that guides our destiny, known only by true sacrifice. In our kingdom of Azh-Kahet, no one understood this sacrifice more than Queen Nephrys, my mother. I saw this when the Black Empire came to conscript us for their last stand at Ny'alotha. My mother refused them.
For this treachery, your line will sever itself. This kingdom will wither with the waning of your worth.
Her strength defined us that day. And in that moment, we felt destined for greatness. But in the years that followed, our greatness was tarnished.
We move on to the next scene, where Princess and Queen look down from their palace at the lowest of their people. Wretched and starving, they're being held back by the Nerubian guards, and the sound of protesting can be heard in the background. The Nerubian kingdom has not done well, and as is always the case, the poorest are the ones to suffer the most, which is causing unrest. The exchange here between AZEROTH and Nephrys shows how, by this time, they're talking a completely different language. At first, Nephrys assumes AZEROTH is concerned about their people's suffering, but that's not what's upsetting her. AZEROTH is bothered by the unrest because she sees it as a threat to her destiny. She can't be queen of a powerful kingdom if that kingdom is no longer powerful, or if the people have decided they don't need kings or queens after all. AZEROTH accuses Nephrys of failing to seize the moment. She doesn't tell us what she means here, but we can probably assume she's talking about expansion, waging war against the other Khazalgar zones so that their empire can grow. This is something we see the Nerubians doing under AZEROTH's rule during the War Within. Nephrys realizes AZEROTH is still failing to understand her lessons. If Nephrys wanted to send her people to war in exchange for a more powerful kingdom, she would not have rejected the old gods in the first place.
Look at them out there. Wretched, starving.
I am not immune to our people's suffering. I believe better days will come.
Not if you keep failing to seize the moment. What was the point of you freeing our future, only to leave us buried in the past?
You comprehend so little. There is much for you to learn before you can be queen.
Mother!
Now, the mural that we see Nephrys gazing at in the next scene is one that's caused quite a bit of speculation ever since it was found in the War Within Alpha. Thank you to Haughty Chicken, who's amazing, for this close-up view of it. It depicts an army of faceless ones and the other old guard adjacent creatures who stand before a gigantic, many-legged, many-eyed, octopus-like creature which seems to be reaching for a crystal, the part of the mural that Nephrys herself zones in on. As she does, we hear a noise like a breath. Then time itself freezes. As Nephrys calls for AZEROTH to ask her if she's seeing this, we hear whispering in the background. Always a clear sign that someone from the void is nearby. Xal'atath reveals herself entering through one of the void portals we often see her travel through. We see flashes of Xal'atath in the past, clearly being worshipped by Nerubians, a flash of a dagger that Xal'atath was bound in, and Nephrys immediately recognizes her, calling her the harbinger. Now, I've actually held off speculating too much about the mural, and I'm so glad I did, because as far as I'm concerned, this video has revealed exactly what we're seeing. I could still be wrong, of course, obviously, but I am convinced that this is Xal'atath, the fifth old god, in her old god form. So just to recap Xal'atath's history a little. Xal'atath is a powerful, void-adjacent entity we met during Legion. She used to be trapped in a dagger by the same name, and from this dagger, she has managed to influence multiple important events and characters throughout Azeroth's history, including the Dark Iron Sorceress Queen Modgud Thracian, the ancestor of Dagran II, who is Queen Moira's son and Magni Bronzebeard's grandson. We'll meet him in the War Within. Xal'atath the dagger was the Shadow Priest artifact weapon, and like all good weapons, she would whisper fun and interesting lines to the wielder.
I remember the dark iron fondly. Modgud was so easy to influence, such was her hate. Imagine her fury when I abandoned her to the Wildhammer at the worst time. I can be very easy to lose. Remember that.
The artifact was known to have been created back during the Black Empire. According to one theory, it was the claw of Y'Shaarj, ripped from the old god's monstrous form and bestowed upon its servants for use in ritual sacrifices. According to another, it was the remains of a forgotten old god who was consumed by its kin. Xal'atath herself refers to the old gods as her brothers.
It was thought his kind was incorruptible. A lesson for my brothers, I suppose. The fallen aspect's lair is near. He was the strongest of them, and yet the easiest one for us to corrupt.
She calls N'Zoth the weakest of us.
It is ironic that the weakest of us may be the ultimate victor. Cthulhu, Yogg-Saron, Y'Shaarj, and... well, only one would remain to consume the world that was always meant to be.
Anne seems to want some sort of revenge on them for something they did to her long ago.
We may face some of my brethren in this conflict, a prospect that delights me. Their power will be mine. They will pay for what was done to me long ago.
This is significant because while for some time it was believed that there were only 4 old gods, Cthulhu, Yogg-Saron, Y'Shaarj, and N'Zoth, rumors of a 5th old god have been flying around for a long time. Eventually, Xal'atath managed to manipulate players into helping her with a deal that she made with N'Zoth, one that freed her from the dagger. While we don't know what the exact details of the deal was, we do know that the dagger was then used to stab N'Zoth, supposedly causing his death, before it disappeared. This was always a little strange. Why would N'Zoth go to all that trouble of obtaining a dagger only to allow it to fall into the hands of those who would ultimately use it to kill him? Unless that was his plan all along. If the dagger held one god before, it could hold another. Possibly the deal involved helping to free Xal'atath in exchange for a guaranteed way for N'Zoth to avoid his own fate. I would theorize that this wouldn't have been N'Zoth's main plan. His main plan was to actually win, but maybe it was a bit of a failsafe, a backup, in case those pesky mortals got the better of him after all. Either way, Xal'atath now hangs out in the body of a dead elf, but that's no more her true form than the dagger was. All this suggests to me that Xal'atath is that 5th old god, and that the creature in the mural is her true form, and this video only confirms that for me. The vision of Xal'atath being worshipped before the vision of Xal'atath in the blade suggests this was the sequence of events. As she floats in front of Nephrys, her robes float out like the tentacles of the octopus in the mural. Nephrys recognizes her as the harbinger. She doesn't need to be told who she is. Even the whispering has always been a big clue. Whispering is the preferred old god method of communication after all. Finally, and this is beautiful, we actually have seen this old god depicted in official artwork before. A page in Chronicles shows Y'Shaarj, Yogg-Saron, N'Zoth, Cthulhu, and a final 5th old god who happens to look like a many-eyed octopus. So either way, whether it's Xal'atath or not, this over here is absolutely the 5th old god. That much seems conclusive. Now, if I'm right and Xal'atath is the 5th old god, then I think that means at some point during the Black Empire she was betrayed by the others and imprisoned in a blade probably made from Y'Shaarj's own claw. But why? Maybe it's because she wanted that crystal, the crystal that the creature in the mural is reaching for, the same crystal that Nephrys focuses on, the crystal that Xal'atath now emerges from almost tauntingly.
Zarek? Are you seeing this?
You have heard my voice in your dreams, Great Queen.
The harbinger.
So what is this crystal? Well, light seems to shine from it, and it's in the sky. In the color version, we can see it's purple and also surrounded by some sort of casing. It's impossible not to think of the mysterious crystal in Halo 4, which usually shines with light but transforms into void energies every now and then. The jury is still out on what that crystal actually is, but it does seem like Nephrys at least might know something important about it, and the way it's encased, with the creature reaching towards it, does make it look a great deal like prey that's been caught in a spider's web. Now, I've theorized this crystal is the physical heart of AZEROTH. There are reasons why that might not be true. For example, the fact that it seems to radiate with light rather than arcane or order. Whether AZEROTH is naturally a Titan or not, we do know that she at least bleeds arcane, because that's what the Well of Eternity is. But without going too much into it, there are also hints in Halo 4 that the crystal is inherently linked to AZEROTH's soul in some way. Now, we recently learned that the radiant visions we've been seeing are exactly like the visions that the people of Koresh saw before their homeworld was consumed by Dimensius the All-Devouring, who just so happened to be friendly enough with Xal'atath to have apparently given her a gift during the Black Empire. So right now, my guess is that Xal'atath's plan is to eat AZEROTH. Maybe consuming that much power would enable her to become a Void Lord like Dimensius. Who knows?
Well, only one would remain to consume the world that was always meant to be.
Anyway, Xal'atath goes on to propose a deal, and it's standard deal with the devil stuff.
Yes, of the empire that was. But the old gods are dead. The empire lies in ashes, and a shadow has fallen on your kingdom. But the blood of the old gods can make your people powerful again. Your reign could last for eternity. All you have to do is take my hand.
Your words are tempting, but the cost is too great. I would never risk my kingdom for such power.
She tells Nephrys the old gods are dead, and we see a vision of N'Zoth's carapace. Personally, I love this detail because it could so easily turn out to be such an outrageous example of the way Xal'atath lies. I mean, she might be an old god, and she's very much alive. Also, if N'Zoth did survive by transferring himself into that dagger, Xal'atath is fully aware of that. Either way, the Black Empire has fallen, and Nephrys' kingdom, which grew mighty during the time of the Black Empire, is fading. Xal'atath promises the blood of the old gods can make the Nerubians powerful again, and we see a vision of a Nerubian held in spider's threads, another hint at who the real spider in this whole scenario is, the blood being pumped into it. The next scene shows us the transformation Xal'atath is offering, the ascended Nerubians. Nephrys is clearly made of stronger stuff than I am, because if a woman that beautiful asked me to hold her hand in exchange for one of the coolest playable races I've ever seen, I would grab that hand so fast, but once again, we see the Queen's real strength as she refuses the offer. As before, Nephrys knows the cost of working with the old gods is not worth the greatness that they offer in exchange. I also think it's not a coincidence that in this scene the crystal part of the mural is shown above Xal'atath's outstretched hand. The first hint that someone else is around occurs as Xal'atath shifts her gaze. We hear and then see the flames moving again. Time has restarted. Princess Ansurek and Queen Nephrys stand beneath the mural, one on each side of the crystal. Nephrys stands near the flame, the light. Ansurek stands away from the flame, closer to the creature, the possible Xal'atath old god. In the next frames, we can see how Ansurek is mostly in the shadow, while Nephrys is in the light. Even as they move closer to each other, even when Ansurek has moved slightly more into the light, we see how the shadow is lurking behind her.
Mother, who are you talking to?
Oh, ghosts, dearest. As always, they are my ready counsel.
I'm not sorry for what I said. I only want our people to be great once more.
Greatness is fleeting. What we must do now is endure. Your time will come, child, but only when you are ready.
And of course, the murder. Once again, by the time Nephrys sees the darkness in her own daughter, she's shocked, but this time it's too late. As the camera turns back to Antarak, we hear the whispering again, and we know who's influencing the princess. Behind her, we see the steps on the mural that lead up to the old god. And if she came down those very stairs, another hint that she is the old god in the picture, Xal'atath lays her hand on Antarak's shoulder. The glee in her face is also the widest smile I think we have ever seen on Xal'atath. It makes me suspect this whole thing is somewhat personal, that Nephrys herself was somehow partially responsible for Xal'atath's original imprisonment. I mean, maybe Xal'atath just enjoys getting people's children to murder their own mothers or something, but she looks like really happy. It feels like there's got to be more story there.
You done?
You're not the only one seeing ghosts, Mother.
How sad to have a queen so wise, and yet so ignorant to the call of destiny.
Her name is Xal'atath. You had your chance, Mother. With this power, Ashkahet is unbound. We will rise. We will conquer. And together, we will finally claim our destiny.
Long live Queen Anzarak.
In the end, Nephrys failed. She failed her people. Standing above them in her palace, feeling sorry for them but hoping for the best, didn't actually help their situation. She failed to teach her daughter. Antarak tells Nephrys Xal'atath's name, but is that because Nephrys never knew the harbinger's name? Or is it because Nephrys never explained about Xal'atath to Antarak? Antarak learned exactly the wrong lesson from her time at Nephrys' side. She thought that the power Nephrys showed was strength, not her willingness to sacrifice power. Nephrys is a tragic character partly because it is her own failures that led to her downfall. And Antarak is a tragic character because she completely lacks understanding. As I said, Antarak, having killed her mother and taken the kingdom, sees herself as the spider. She is totally oblivious to the fact that the true spider in the scenario is obviously Xal'atath, and has been almost embarrassingly easy to manipulate with flattery. For Antarak, her mother's rejection of the old gods was probably the most formative memory of her life, and yet her lack of understanding about what made that moment so important has led her to doing exactly the opposite, all in the name of a strength and destiny she never really understood in the first place. By accepting the blood of the old gods, transforming herself and her followers into the ascended Nerubian, and completely ruining her face in the process. You were such a pretty girl. Why would you do this to yourself? Antarak has led her people directly into Xal'atath's web. The correct takeaway for us to remember is blood does not actually grant magical good leadership abilities, and royal problems are nothing a good revolution can't solve. Also, Xal'atath is almost certainly an old god, and maybe wants to eat AZEROTH, and is really good at manipulation, and like that spider from that poem, flatters her victims directly into a trap. Just something to keep in mind. If you enjoyed this video and you would like to see more, please consider liking, subscribing, commenting, all that good YouTube stuff, or else supporting me on Patreon, where I will be posting articles to accompany each video for those of you who still prefer to have something to read. The more support I get, the more likely I will be able to spend a lot more time creating videos like this one. Thank you again for watching, and can you believe the war within is just around the corner? Like, how is that even possible? Seriously, what is going on with time? Because I don't even know.